Hey guys, welcome to my conversation with Coach Vic Balmeceda, your 3A Florida duels champions. I mean, back to back, what, 6 or 7 years? Is that right, Coach?
Yes, sir.
Um, how does it feel to win another title? Is it any different? I mean, it's a new set of kids, you know?
Yeah, every year there's a different feel to it. The last 2 years we've had super powerful, dominant teams, and going in like unlike 3 years ago where we were doubtful and we needed a kid to make weight or two and we needed to win a toss. Um, the past 2 years we just had a solid kid in every weight class, and I don't want it's arrogant to say this, but or too overconfident, but it I felt like we were gonna, I'm very pessimistic too, but I felt pretty strong about our chances of winning. And to keep these kids motivated, you got to test them and say, hey, let's try to keep everybody under double digits or try to shut them out, just to keep them their head in the match and to keep them motivated and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, and I would think, okay, so from an outsider's perspective, I'm walking around the matches and everything else, and I'm looking at it, and they hear me talking, or they hear this group talk, and they hear Parsons talk, they heard this, they know how good of a team they are. But I will tell you, like in that match with Osceola, even though the duel wasn't overly close or anything like that, man, it felt like they were into every individual match. They were super excited about that next South Dade kid coming up and doing his job.
That's something I preach to them. I from my own experiences where I didn't live in the moment. I didn't appreciate my own personal victories while I was in high school. I was too critical, or in college. I witnessed it with my son. Every He would win national titles or the Super 32, and instead of coming off the mat celebrating and happy, he'd be upset of a call an official made, or upset that he gave up a takedown. So I've learned to I want the kids to understand that these moments are precious, and that they need to live in the moment, seize the day, and cheer for each other, and fight for their brothers out there on the mat, and cheer for their family, and make it fun. Even if it is somewhat of a blowout, it's not as exciting. I kept finding myself looking over at the Lake Gibson Jesuit match,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but trying to beat a really high quality team such as Osceola and trying to knock off some of their super studs
Mhm.
is very challenging. So that in itself, is what motivates these kids. But again, like they see their teammates as brothers, and again, I said, live in the moment, enjoy this moment because it doesn't last forever. Us as coaches, I mean, we would give everything we could to go back in time and be able to wrestle once again.
Yeah,
So
I would. Yeah, no
yeah,
doubt.
so
Yeah, so, I I I'm with you. It was hard to miss what was happening to your right. That was a fantastic duel that was going on, but,
I
your
thought it was kind of rude of them to be making all that noise over there.
Wa wow, it was a wild one, and if
It
anybody
was
didn't get to
awesome.
see it, they really should have been in the gym to see it. But, your kids, the stomping, the clapping, they I mean, I know, like, you get a Kevin Oliveira versus a Gunnar Holland match, that's gonna get everybody excited, right? That's that sort of thing. But, you have 2 kids who are good, tough kids competing with one another at 132 pounds or whatever the case is. And your kids, the duel is wrapped up by that point in time, but they're there, man. They weren't checked out. They didn't, hey, we've already won. No, they wanted their teammate to win.
Well, and that's also a tribute to the team that Osceola is. Osceola, you're beating a kid with an Osceola singlet. So that's how much respect we have for Osceola. You're it might not be one of their big name kids, but the team is still a quality team, and we're sitting in their in their gym, in their home gym. And when they pull off a win, the gym goes
Yeah, it
crazy.
does. Yeah, it did.
So in turn, our kids are gonna fight harder and cheer louder and cheer harder because Osceola, as friendly as our rivalry is, I mean, we have some rivalries where maybe the teams don't get along as well. And us and Osceola have always gotten along really well. We've gone on some huge battles, but at the end of the day, they're one of the top teams in Florida. And when you're beating one of their kids, you're going to be pretty happy about it.
Yeah. So, I want to go back in time to the beginning of the year, and that, you know, your team, you had, Sawyer wasn't in the lineup yet. EJ was out. He was dinged up, you had to count on some other kids to kind of step up and step in and kind of carry the South Dade singlet, forward and kind of show who you guys are. And they didn't always get wins, but they always went out and competed. How important was it for some of those other kids to step in and kind of, assume that responsibility?
It wasn't on purpose by any
No,
means.
right, of course, yeah,
Yeah, like a coach wants to show up with their best lineup every single time, and we like we did last year. We set out to win everything we enter, and we went through a round of sickness and then a second round of sickness where the kids got flus and this and that and injuries, and then kids are going on recruiting trips, and then Sawyer's coming back just right from football, so he deserves a few weeks off. We've only had our full lineup on the mat for the regional duels. I'm sorry,
right,
for the district duels, regional duels, and the state duels. Every other time there's SATs or there's kids sick, injured, and yeah. So when the big guns aren't there, there's no choice but to step up, and these kids, although they're younger and their names aren't built up quite as much, they have a lot of wrestling under their belt, and they're out there to prove why they're the starter at South Dade High School, and at our school it's like the next man up. Everyone's trying to outdo the best kid on the team or the best kid that came the team before and all that kind of thing. So
yeah, no. So I want you to reflect real quick on your seniors, because they're the ones who kind of, um, you know, I'm sure have played a huge role in kind of, helping kind of continue that culture of next man up.
our senior class, I mean, you don't get too many Sawyer Bartelts coming through your program.
Yeah,
Born and raised a wrestler, went through the gladiator system, coach, duck trained.
yeah,
Uh, but then it would be, I'd be remiss to not mention that we had Brett Lee Reyna, a few years before that, and then my son a year before that,
right,
and then Earl Hall
yeah,
and Kendrick Sanders, and the list goes on and on. So yeah, Sawyer Bartelt is arguably one of the goats, if not the goat of Florida or of South Dade. But man, he's there. I wouldn't put Brett Lee and Brevin and Kendrick Sanders, U.S. Open champion, and Earl
yeah,
Hall, first forever 4-time state champion. I wouldn't put them too far behind. Depends on what style of wrestling you believe is the
best
most
out. Yeah,
reflection of wrestling standards. Each kid that I just named, signed to a big college, program, Oklahoma State,
yeah,
Iowa State, Earl Hall, Iowa State as well.
yeah,
But our senior class, and then we have another state. When you're just the state champ at South Dade, it's like, oh wow, you're just a state champ. It's like, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And Luis Acevedo is our team captain, and he tears it up on the state level. He beats Roman Lermer a couple times this year with nationally ranked. He placed at the Michigan Grappler, so you would consider that kind of an All American. Um, my son is a senior, so it's something
yeah,
special to see him out there wrestling. He's had the misfortune of being in some super studs weight classes, and I'm not
Mhm.
going to move him in or out of the weight class just because some studs are there. You got to
Right.
be fair to the rest of the team, but he's had to wrestle Cooper Haas
Yep.
and Brennan Van Hoke, and then Sebastian Melguizo his freshman year were in his weight. So he could easily be a couple times state champ if he was in another weight.
Yeah.
Uh, Chris Sanchez, who's only taken, sixth and fifth in state, but the kid's placed at 3 national tournaments. Um, and pure technician at 190 pounds, signing with Kent State, D1 commit.
Mhm.
It's a special class. It's a special class, and we've had a lot of success with them.
Mhm.
The senior class is also one of the classes that lost that dual meet state championship,
Yeah.
so they learned a lot from that. Uh, so they had some heartbreak, whereas classes before them won, two state titles each for 4 years straight. So
Yeah.
it's a unique class.
Yeah. So I want, you went through a list of names. And I mean, you can name them probably better than I can, but I mean, you and I can kind of go through some names back through the days of South Dade. I mean, all the way back to when you began coaching, taking over Coach McCoy and Sean McCoy and so on and so forth. I want you. This is purely hypothetical and a guess, but we just started the state duels 7 years ago or so. Is there a team that you look back on a year of a South Dade team that you would have been like, that would have been the best dual team, but they never got to wrestle for a dual state title?
Uh, yeah, oof.
Oof. I know that's a tough question. I know it's a tough question.
Let me first say that our 95 and 96, probably not our 97 team wouldn't have won a dual meet state championship, because back in those days you can win a state title with 4 state champs,
Hmm.
6 state placers. It has completely changed. And then back then we had some forfeits here and there, and we had some weak spots. We had our super studs, but we had some weak spots. Um, Back to your original question, the 2008 team that
Hmm.
knocked off the streak was extremely strong, and they're always going to claim to be the best team in South Dade history because they knocked off the streak.
Right, right.
But we had a team in 2017 or 2018. I think it was my son's freshman or sophomore year, where we had, Shy Hill, Kyron Taylor, both national
Oh,
champs at
right.
215, 220 in heavyweight. Elijah Verona was a 13-time All-American. My son Brevin, Todd Perry. I mean,
Hmm.
there wasn't a weak spot in the lineup, and there were multiple. I mean, they were nationally ranked then. So again, and I sound biased, and my 2008 team thinks I'm biased because my son was on that team. But yeah, they're like, no, you only like it because Brevin was on that team. But and then we try to match up the 2008 team against the 2017 team. I believe it was 2017, and and then you have the problem with, well, can the 2017 sophomore Brevin beat the senior, of this
Right,
guy? And I forget who it is,
right, right.
because you can only think in your head how good Brevin was as a senior, but then you have to say, well, will the 10th grade version of Brevin beat that guy? And then just an endless argument. But it's
Correct.
fun. But it's fun to debate
It's
it.
it's fun to talk about. I mean, honestly,
So yeah,
right,
2008 easily would have won a dual meet state title, since they knocked off, a
Brandon. Yeah.
34-year match win streak. I wouldn't say easy because it was a hard match beating Brandon, but we that they would have we would have definitely had a chance to win that one. And again, the 2016, 2017, 2018, the teams that Brevin were on were stacked as well. So
All right. So one of the things that I absolutely love to watch from you guys that I haven't been down to is you guys do an alumni duel. Um, at least you have in the past. Who is somebody that you're gonna pull out a name that still brings it like it was just yesterday?
I'll tell you who I'm not going to pull out of that hat is myself. I, I, it was sort of like a prank kind of a thing. Well, Pat Lugo was supposed to wrestle his brother Ozzy Lugo
Yeah.
in the alumni match, and Ozzy, I guess, cleared up his head and said, "I'm not wrestling my brother. You guys are crazy." So, so I had the really brilliant idea of saying, "Okay, I can wrestle him, but it's only going to be like a minute periods." And man,
Did you go out there and wrestle
I
Pat for?
did, and he just waited for like a minute until I got really tired. He, stood his ground, like perfect position. I was probably like at least 25, 30 pounds heavier and stronger than him, but I couldn't budge him. And then he saw when I started getting tired, he would almost like knock me down with his, mind you, that he had never taken me down up to that point.
Oh, is that true?
I swear. And not during, never, never. Now, once he went to Iowa and he came back, we didn't wrestle too often, but so I'm thinking more about when I was his coach and he was,
Yeah. Yeah.
wrestling
Yeah.
for me. But again, that stuck in my head, and I'm like, oh, I could probably hang with him for a little while. But that it was funny. It was funny just to see me in a singlet again, to be honest with you.
Ah,
Uh, but a kid that always brings it. I mean, you could pull Earl Hall off, off the mat. It's these guys that are continuing to coach still. Omi Acosta over there in life. He'll go
yeah.
on the mat and look like he hasn't skipped a beat because he's there training with college kids all day. Earl Hall. Um, um, Willie Wiggins comes back as big as he is,
Oh,
and
wow.
he
Okay.
doesn't
Yeah.
practice all the time, and will go out there and beat anybody that we throw out there. Um, there haven't been really good even matchups. Like it's always like somebody's super duper favorite over the other guy. The one that really is interesting or brings the hype is not a big name. His name's Prince Thompson. He was a state runner up, and
Okay.
man, he will talk the smack, in a little group chat. He's like a promoter. I'm gonna beat this guy. I'm like, Prince, man. Just one was against Omi. I'm like, Omi's training college wrestlers every day, and then you're like, like I think a pharmaceutical. I mean, how
Right.
are you getting better? Yeah, but I'm running. I'm running really hard. I'm like, that's not the excuse, dude. And then even when you guys were wrestlers, he was a better wrestler than you then when you guys were both wrestlers. So but it's fun. It's fun. It's
Well, it's a really good idea. It's a lot of fun. I mean, you guys have such a tradition at South Dade. If I could have turned the shirt around, it says the dynasty because it really has been a dynasty. Um, and how much do you? I mean, this will be my last question, or we can talk a little bit about the moving to traditional. But how much do the high school kids get into that match? Do they love seeing the old guys get out there or no?
oh, yeah, absolutely. We do it right after Coach Duck's state champ camp.
Okay.
So we already have a bunch of people and alumni and people that are helping Coach Duck's camp there, and then teams that are going to travel several hours to go home will actually stay. I remember Braden River, Caesar Sarbono stayed to watch, and they'll actually stay just because they find it super entertaining to watch a bunch of old fat bald guys going at it. Uh, but they get into it, and the families and the parents they get into it, and then when we do introductions and music, and they walk out to the music, and then I'm the announcer, and
Oh, are you?
I'm the play-by-play announcer, and I'm just ripping them. I'm making fun of
That's
them the whole
great.
time.
That's great. All right, so let's move to the last question, which is obviously you still have goals ahead, right? There is a goal sitting at the end of the season. I mean, look, we look back to last year's team. They were dominant. They were a dominant program or dominant team. Um, I know the goal is to win a state title, and then a traditional state title. Is it kind of like you're measuring yourself against that team, or are you just not? You just kind of continuing to just kind of do your thing. How do you approach it with the kids?
uh, so last year's team we qualified 14
Yeah.
wrestlers to state. First time in Dade County history, at least, coming from the region of Doom.
Yep.
Um, and then I challenged them. I say, hey, well, we qualified 14 wrestlers. Why don't we try to get 14 on the podium? And our young kids stepped up and everybody placed. Now, I don't know if we can have 14 placers in the state, but I think we only ended up with 3 or 4 state champions. Would 6 or 7 state champions top, 14 state placers? So there's different challenges. Like, yeah, I'm trying to say to them, hey, every single kid could qualify and every single kid could place. But every kid that went last year and placed 7th and 5th and 4th and 8th, they have a realistic chance of being in the finals.
Right.
So if we can somehow push 8, 9 to the finals, like Brandon used to in their heyday, and Lake Highland Prep, that would be a whole different accomplishment in itself. Like, I think we've only had the most state champs we've had are 5 in 1 year. So just to try to outdo that, would be something that we're shooting for. And then of course you're always trying to get as many placers as you can. Maybe scores the most points you've ever scored. I don't know. Everything has to go your way. You gotta avoid injuries, which we have kids, fighting through injuries right now. Everybody has to be healthy and not sick, and the brackets gotta fall the right way and all that kind of thing. But yeah, that's the challenges now, is just trying to, if we could keep up with that or do better than that. Again, if I had 7 or 8 state champs, I think that would top the placing 14, all 14 on.
And that would just open the can of worms of who is the best team in South Dade history. They would then be like, we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And wrestling has changed so much too, that you can't, the styles of it has changed. And I believe like our kids back in the 90s and the early 2000s are tougher type of kids, but they're not half the wrestlers that these guys are. But they're not half the wrestlers that these guys are because they didn't have the opportunity to wrestle since they were 6 or 7 at Gladiator and come up through this system of knowing these moves and get exposed to wrestling so early. So that's the only reason they're not the same wrestlers, but overall they're every bit or tougher physically wise, and they still accomplished great things. They just, wrestling was just a little different back then.
It was. And
it's
if
hard
you
to compare.
And if you look 20 years before or 15 years before when you wrestled, I mean, it's the same sort of kind of comparison.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking the time. Congratulations on another state title. I never get tired of saying that. You guys are a class act, a class program. I always love talking to your kids, and I want to wish you the best of luck, kids. Traditionals.
Thank you. Appreciate it.